Hello everybody, I'm going to make one of these center insulators. They're pretty expensive if you want to buy one on the internet. They're easy to make, so let's get started here. This is what it'll look like when it's all done. And of course this is what you're going to hook your coax to when you make your dipole antenna. So here's a few of the things you need. Went to the hardware and found these things. I decided to use the one with a round top on it. So the first thing we're going to do is drill a hole, because this is where your coax connects to, and so we've got to put that little gizmo in there. So I use this step bit to make that hole big enough until it finally will fit in there. And then next we're going to put it down in there and stick it through the hole and pull it up through there and just kind of get an idea of how it'll fit. So I've marked my holes where I'm going to bolt this in, and I'm drilling those out now. And it's pretty tricky to oh, there I did a test fit just to make sure the coax would screw on tight. I always countersink these heads, so we'll just clean those holes out. And there we go. I have the first bolt in. You can see how that is held down in there. Now it's pretty tricky sometimes to get these little lock washers on and the nuts, and I discovered a good way to do it is to put it on the end of a pencil and just hold that pencil down there on that bolt and then drop it in. That seems to work pretty good. Same with the nut. So there we go. We've got that all bolted in there nicely. And now we're going to get it wired up. So you cut off about that much wire right there. You need two pieces, of course. And one of them connects to that center conductor right there. And I have one of these little helping hand gizmos, and that'll hold that wire right there on that center conductor while I solder it. Now you can solder these wires on there before you put it down in there, but I thought maybe the wires would be in my way, so that's why I'm putting them on afterwards. The other wire is just soldered onto that plate. So when you solder on your wires, you solder one wire to this center conductor here, and then just solder the other wire onto this plate right here. And of course that's isolated from the center conductor, so you can see where I put that wire there. Alright, now this thing has got to go down in this cap, so I'll drill a hole. We have to have a hole for the wires to come out of that. Okay, that wire fits in there. That's good. Now I'll drill the other side. And you'll see how this works in just a minute here. There we go. Countersink just to clean it up a little bit. Get the burrs out of there. Okay, now I've tucked my wires down in there, and that's gonna slide right up until about that far. Okay, so now I'm gonna drill not all the way through because I don't want to hit my wires. I'm just making a mark on that inner piece. Now I'll take it apart and we'll pull the wires up out of there. Okay, there's my marks. Get the wires out. Now we'll drill on through so that these things will match up. Alright, now when you go to put it together, we have to cut a little slot so that wire has some place to go to come out of there. You'll see what I mean in a second here. So I cut a little slot on down to my hole. Now we'll do it on the other side just like that. Now when you put that together, that wire slides right down in there. Now when I made one of these before, I glued this thing together. And I thought this time, why not put a couple screws in there, then I can take it apart. I'll show you that later. Now we're going to mount these eye bolts. And so it's got to be up higher there. So we're going to drill about right there on both sides. And I always used a small bit to do a pilot hole. And then I change bits and put in the bit the right size for that eye bolt to go through. Okay, we'll drill the other side out here. And now we're going to drill one down through the top so that you can hang this dipole up in a tree or somewhere. There we go. So we've got one there and one on that side for one leg of the dipole to connect to, and then there's the other side. And that way you can have enough wire, and I solder that onto each leg. You'll see how I do that after a little bit. Now I put a washer on both sides, a nut and washer on both sides of this eye bolt, so there's no way it can loosen up, and I have a lock washer in there too. Okay, now we'll put this together, and here's this screw that I'm going to put down through there that'll hold this thing together, and that way if I ever want to take it apart and repair it or do something, I can do that rather than gluing it, and then it's a throwaway then. So got our two screws, and that should hold that no problem. Now I'll put a little bit of caulk right in there, just so no water can get in there. Maybe put some around the eye bolts too, just for fun. So that's how I connect my wire right there, and then I solder it and tape it up. The most widely used formula to calculate the approximate overall length of a wire required for a dipole antenna is 468 divided by the frequency in megahertz, and that will equal the length of the wire in feet. So for example, I'm making a 40-meter dipole, and I want the antenna to be resonant at 7.150 megahertz. So you take 468 divided by 7.15, and you get 65.45 feet. Now that's the overall length of the dipole. So each half of the dipole will be 32.72 feet. Now what I usually do is cut my dipole long. I'll cut this at 33 feet for each side, and then I'll test it and see what frequency it's resonant at, and I can always cut off a little bit if I need to, but it's pretty hard to add wire, so I make each side a little bit long and then test it and go from there. This is a dipole antenna that I put up a while ago, and this will give you an idea of how I did it. Here's one leg of the dipole coming in, and I just made several wraps around the eye there, and left a little extra here, and then this is the wire that comes out of the center connector here, and I just soldered it right at that point, and then wrapped it with some electrical tape. So it's worked for many years. Every once in a while I test it to make sure it's okay, and it's working fine. Now it's a good idea to do something so that all of the weight of the coax is coming up from the ground up to your center conductor isn't just hanging on this connector right here. With the wind whipping around so on, eventually this wire can pull out of there. So if you do something to connect from here down to a little bit lower than your connector here, the weight will be held by this rather than by your connector. I think you see what I mean. So anyway, good luck making a dipole, and I hope you have fun making this center conductor here. Bye bye, and thanks for watching.